A lot of people want to know how many genders are there anyway. Well, that's not something that can easily be answered. Because gender is socially constructed, it means that ideas about gender will change over time and place. For instance, take a look at this picture of King Louis. Louis was the king of France in the 16 and 1700s. What do you notice about his appearance? A wig, tights, high heels, makeup, ruffles, and a long, luxurious robe. These might seem like very feminine things to us today, but back then, everything about Louis was seen as very masculine. In fact, high heels were originally men's fashion. The higher the heel, the more status and power a guy had. Over time, though, these things became associated more with femininity, and therefore women. We tend to think of culture as our country of origin, ethnicity, race, or religion, but pop culture, the practices, beliefs, and objects that are dominant or prevalent in a society at any given point in time, are also a big influence on how we view gender. We often take for granted the messages in media like TV, movies, video games, and music. But if we turn a critical eye to what's being said, especially when it comes to ideas about sex and gender, it's easy to recognize some common themes. Gender stereotypes cause harm by creating double standards when it comes to sex. Let's try a quick exercise to explore how this happens. We'll draw a chart with 4 quadrants, and we'll have a side for men and a side for women. And then we'll separate men and women into 2 categories, those who have sex and those who don't. Let's give some names or labels commonly given to people in these categories. For instance, women who don't have sex might be called a tease, prude, stuck up, or hard to get. Not very flattering. And men who don't have sex might be labeled as a loser, forever alone, a simp, or even a fag. Again, not necessarily terms that someone would feel comfortable being called. For women who have sex, or even just rumored to be having sex, they might be called a slut, a thought, a hoe, a whore, easy, asking for it, or cheap. So far, no one seems to come out a winner here. All of these terms are used to shame, humiliate, or take power away from someone, and using them can actually increase people's risk for harm. Well, what about the last category? Men who have sex are often called studs, playas, lady killers, or can be seen as having clout. Interesting. While some of these terms are no doubt problematic, they aren't exactly put-downs. In fact, many of them communicate that a guy's got status and power. Sex is something that both partners should enjoy and feel safe and supported in doing with each other. Sex is cooperative. No one wins at sex, and no one is in charge of sex. But when we create a social dynamic in which one group of people are rewarded for being sexual, and others are humiliated, shamed, and bullied, we all lose out. You might be thinking, now wait a minute. This example is incredibly cisgender and heteronormative. And you're right, but consider this. Have you ever heard someone introduce their same-sex or gender non-binary partner to someone only to be asked, "So which one of you is the girl?" or something to that effect? This is exactly how gender stereotypes create harm. Even though we live in a time where same-sex marriage is legal and more folks are looking at gender as more than an old-school binary, our understanding of dating and sexual relationships still often defaults to traditional dominant or submissive roles. So when someone asks a dumb question like, "Who's the girl?" they're basically asking, who's in charge? Who's the dominant one in this relationship? It's almost as if as a society, we can't even envision a situation in which 2 partners, regardless of gender, are able to enjoy a healthy and egalitarian relationship. But when we tell stories that challenge harmful stereotypes and are inclusive of everyone and their identities, we create a world in which everyone starts to feel safer and has the freedom to be themselves without fear.